Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. But when this video premieres, it will be Sunday, October 26th, and this is our week look ahead and payment guesstimate video for our what we call $1 billion club, and that is the 4 largest individual income funds within YieldMax's high yield ETFs: Coney on Coinbase, Misti for what used to be MicroStrategy, now Strategy, NVDY for Nvidia, and TSLY for Tesla. Reminder, I'm on X at ETF_inspector1. A lot of times people say that the notifications are too slow. On YouTube, I ask that you still do click it because that tells YouTube that you like the channel and that they should suggest it to other people. But if you follow on X, that comes out instantly to let you know what time it's premiering and with a link. All right, let's go ahead and get right into it. We'll start off just by looking at how the funds performed over the past week. As far as Coney is concerned, they ended up 1.5%. Now that's not factoring the fact that they paid a distribution. So they within the week paid a distribution and still went up 1.4%, almost 1.5%. So they had a decent week. Obviously, a little dip there in the middle that they recovered from. It's going to very much look like Coinbase's. Next, we've got Misti. They ended down for the week, 3.85%. Now, some of that was the 21.22 cent distribution, but they obviously still ended down even without that. MicroStrategy, of course, will look similar. NVDY ended up for the week, almost 1.5%, same percentage as Coney, and again, they were able to pay a distribution and still move up in the week. So you basically completely recovered instantly within the same week from the distribution. And then TSLY's kind of a different story. They had 2 bad days. But no, actually 1 bad day. This drop was just the payment, which they throughout the day recovered from. And then they ended bad. So overall on the week they were down 2%. Right, as we can see, Tesla looked very similar. So down 2%, but part of that was paying out a distribution. So let's go ahead and take a look at our charts. We'll just go through in alphabetical order. As far as Coney is concerned, we've got trades starting on the 20th where they lost 3.6 million. Then on Tuesday they lost another 1.5 almost. Then on Wednesday they lost another little over a half. Thursday they brought in 14 million, and then Friday they lost 19.6. That ends up being a negative for the week, $11 million. So that doesn't really help us with making an estimate. So from there, we just kind of have to do our best. They tell us to look at the IV of the underlying, that's implied volatility. We can look at past payments. Now, obviously, looking at past payments, we have to kind of make adjustments because they used to be every 4 weeks. Now they're weekly. But in any case, I looked through everything and came up with a guess of 8.5 cents. So a little less than last week, but remember, that's only 1 week. So you're looking at what that would be a 34-cent 4-week distribution. And if we go to their website, scroll down, 34 was literally the most recent payment. There was a little better the 4 weeks before. There was another 34 before that. So 8.5 cents is kind of right in line with what they've been paying in general when they haven't made big money. And the way that I came up with that, obviously, if they're losing money, that's not wonderful. 8.5 does come out to be a little bit more than the 65%, I believe. But we do have a synthetic that is worth $100 million. It's going to get closed out in approximately a month. So they told us that they're going to be smoothing payments out, not giving a huge chunk at a time. So I think that some of that is going to apply to the helping increase the payment. Now, I would increase even more if it wasn't for the fact that there's another one right behind it that's going to cost $60 million to close out. So 8.5 cents, I may be a little low. If I had to guess one way or the other, if I'm wrong, I would guess maybe the payment would be a little higher than that. All right, as far as our week look ahead, we know we've got our synthetic at 300 that expires in on the 21st of November, and then we have a synthetic at 390 expiring December 19th. The first is worth 103 million. The second is going to cost 63 million. Now, every day that Coinbase moves in one direction or other, these will also move as well. So nothing's finalized until we get there. Now, when you start synthetics, it represents a lot of money, and yet it almost costs nothing, because when you buy a call at the money and you sell a put at the money, unless there's a tilt in one direction, they basically almost cancel each other out. So we've got tons of money represented without actually having to spend tons. So then that money sits in treasuries to collect a couple percent, 3, 4, 5%, while we're waiting, and also to be able to get put to use to close out if needed at the end. Now, obviously, sometimes it turns into add more money to it when you close out the synthetic, and it worked out great. All right, Coinbase ended the week at 354.46. It was obviously an enormous day on Friday, so some of our calls that are sold for next week are already in the money. Others are just barely out of the money. So Coinbase has all their calls sold at 2 strikes, 350 and 355. So obviously the 350s are in the money by 1.2%, and the 355s are just barely out of the money by 0.15%. They have sold 100% of the possible calls, meaning if we total up all the synthetics, that's going to give us a quantity, and that's how many calls we can sell, and that's all of them right there. They've purchased calls on the other side, so they're doing spreads at differing numbers: 362.50, 365, 367.50, and 377.50. So if there's a large jump in Coinbase, it runs past our sold strikes. We are only capped up until the point where we hit those purchased call strikes, and then we start capturing more upside. So what we might see is an early week adjustment. Well, it's going to depend on which way the market starts moving on Monday. If it starts to drop back after that huge increase, they may leave things alone. If it wants to take off, you'll probably see them close these out and sell new ones higher so that we can capture the upside. People sold out of the fund on Friday, 2.3 million shares, bringing it down to 200,025,000 shares. The NAV at the close, 656, with the assets under management being 1.3 billion. And Coney was trading at 656, so right at the same as the NAV at the close. All right, on Thursday, they're going to announce earnings. Coinbase is, so that's going to definitely make a splash. Well, and we will get the declaration from YieldMax on Wednesday, the 29th. All right, next up, we have Misti. We'll start with the trades. On Monday, they lost almost $8 million. On Tuesday, they lost almost another $8 million. Wednesday, they brought in close to $4 million. Thursday, they brought in $16.7 million. And Friday, they brought in $7 million for a total of $11 million of trading profit on the week. Divided by the shares, it comes out to 4.2 cents per share. Now, the last payment was just 21.22 cents, so they're not going to pay us 4 cents. But what do we think they are going to pay us? We're not getting any extra help here from our synthetics. They are all deep in the negative. They're going to cost a lot to close out. And so we only made about 4 cents. So what do I think we're going to pay? I said 17, so I think it's going to be decently lower than the last. And now that we're not playing the got to keep the payments above $1, since we're on the weekly, and they didn't go for 25 cents right off the bat, 22. That was a big one last week, but this week with not making very much and having these negative synthetics hovering, I think it's going to be around 17 cents per share. Again, I'm brand new to this is the first week of this series, so we'll get a feel for what kind of distributions they like to hover around and go from there. But 17 cents is my guess. We'll find out on Wednesday the 29th. Again, these guys Thursday, Strategy announces earnings. Let's see, we've got synthetics. The first two expire November 21st. The last one expires December 19th. They are at 330, 345, and 350 with Strategy at 289. That's real ugly. That's why they were going to cost 200 million, 188 million, and 170 million to close out. So we need Strategy to move up to get rid of this negative value here. There's 3.3 billion in assets under management. They were getting close to tangling with Ulti over the lead, but Ulti has dropped off below 3 billion, so Misti stands alone at the top. People sold out of the fund. 1.1 million shares dropped off the outstanding shares on Friday, bringing it down to a little over 282 million. That brought the NAV to 1174. And they were trading at 1173 at the close. Our calls this week, so they're definitely not purchasing as many calls to create equal call spreads. They are selling lots of calls, and then just a little bit of them have the other end of a call spread. Calls are sold at 300, 302.50, 305, 307.50, 310, 312.50, and 315. Anywhere from 3.7 to 8.9% out of the money. That means we can capture a decent amount of upside if MSTR wants to go for a run. The other nice thing is we've only sold about 80% of the possible calls that we could. So in the event MSTR takes off, we can sell calls without having to buy to close them first and just bring in income. So a good way to win on the options trading side of things. Now, on the other side of things, if MSTR trades sideways or goes down, then we missed out on 20% of the potential income we could have been bringing in. So it's a got to figure out which way you want to look at it. Double-edged sword, I believe they would call that. All right, next we've got NVDY. We've got trades where they made $826,000 on Tuesday, almost $2 million on Wednesday, $6.4 million on Thursday, and $5.3 million on Friday. They won trades every day they traded this past week, bringing in $14.6 million on the trading week. That equates to a little over 13 cents per share. We like that right off the bat because last week they paid 12 cents a share. So they earned 13 cents a share. And then we got to go from there and say what else plays into it. Over the week, they were up 1.5%, so we don't have to worry about the fact that anything was dropping or didn't recover from the last payment. We fully recovered plus made money, so that's a good sign. We made plenty trading. That's a good sign. And then we look at our synthetics, both expiring on November 21st, 165s and 170s, with Nvidia at 186. They're worth 116 million and 70 million. So again, they're not going to want to cash these out and pay some monster like $2 a share payment on a week. So they said they're going to be spreading them out. So we're going to go with 13 cents and then help it out with these synthetics and come up with I said 25 cents. So we'll see. That's more than double what last week's payment was. So I could be way off my rocker, but let's just see what happens. I'm guessing 25 cents. We'll find out on Wednesday the 29th. We've still got about a month before Nvidia declares their earnings, so we don't have to worry about that yet. There's $1.7 billion in assets under management. people were selling out of the fund on Friday. 425,000 shares came off the outstanding shares, bringing it down to 111,700,000. The NAV was at 1588, and NVDY closed trading at 1590. When we look at our calls sold for the week, another one where Nvidia had a pretty big day on Friday. So the calls some of them are starting at or very close to the money. For this week, we've got calls sold at 185, 187.50, and 190, anywhere from 0.6% in the money to 2% out of the money. And then we've got the other end of the call spreads at further strikes. 100% of the possible calls sold. So we're gonna need some sideways trading on Nvidia this week in order to win the trades. But that's not necessarily the biggest deal. If it goes up, they'll just pay to close these out and sell new ones. It'll come as a trading loss, but it will allow the share price to climb with Nvidia. All right, and last but not least, TSLY. TSLY only traded on 3 days this past week. Tuesday they made $1 million. Thursday they made just about $6 million, and Friday they made $7.7 million. So a great trading week. $14.7 million was earned over the course of the week. That comes out to 9.88 cents per share. When we switch over and take a look at last week's payment was 16.52 cents per share. Obviously, they must have done really well last week to be paying 100% annual with a 50% implied volatility of the underlying. So I don't think we're going as high as 16 this time, but we made 9.8, so that's going to be our base. And then from there, we're going to take a look at our synthetics. Both expire next month, 415 and 420. They're worth 33 and 17 million, so it's not a ton of money to spread out amongst 150 million shares, but it's a little bit to help. And so from there, we come up with a guesstimate of 14 cents. We'll just see from there. I don't know what to say other than that. Wednesday, the 29th will be Declaration Day. Tesla already announced their earnings this past week. That's why we had some of the crazy swings. We look at our calls sold for the week. Everything's out of the money, so that's a good start. Lots of different strikes. We're selling calls at 437.50, 440, 447.50, 450, 452.50, 455, and 457.50. Anywhere from 0.8 to 5.4% out of the money, and then they purchase calls on the other side of all those call spreads. There's 100% of the possible calls sold, and we got $1.2 billion in assets under management. People actually bought into TSLY on Friday. 450,000 new shares added to the outstanding shares, bringing it just under 150 million. I actually thought about buying some Tesla shares on my ride home from my daughter's soccer game today when their automatic braking system saved us from getting in an accident. We don't own one. One almost hit us. Would have been our fault, but we'll just leave it at that. Tesla and TSLY had a rough day on Friday, that's for sure. So I don't know. That 14, it's possibly that could be a little high, to be honest. But all right, so that's all I have for you. Trying to keep these videos short and sweet. I got a dad joke of the day. So before I do, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the likes, comments, and shares. Please help get the word out on these videos. If you're in different groups or anything on X, I know there's lots of trading and finance group, or if you're on Discord or Reddit or whatever. I think there's lots of people looking for detailed daily coverage of the trades and holdings, so please let people know that we're doing that over here on this channel. So, all right, dad joke of the day. What's the best thing about Switzerland? I don't know, but the flag is a big plus. If you don't get that joke, you got to look up the Switzerland flag. All right, thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video.